Hi students, welcome to the second lecture of this course. Today we'll have a look at what motivation is, different motives as to reason why people do and do not participate in sport, and then it'll follow on in the next few weeks about exercise adherence and how to start a program. Right, well let's begin with, I'm going to share my screen with you, the lecture itself. Okay, so often we hear coaches say, give 110%, it's all about effort, go hard, go home, he just doesn't have it in him, winners never quit. I mean, as coaches and leaders, we tend to use these affirmation statements to try and encourage people to be motivated and to really push themselves in their performance. What is it? Motivation is the direction and intensity of one's effort. It is concerned with the direction, so whether an individual seeks out approaches or is attracted to certain situations. But it's also about the intensities, so the degree of effort put into a task. Common problems with motivation is that we often hear coaches say, you need to get motivated, be motivated. The problems identified though by having this approach as a coach and assuming that they're able to get this done is sometimes an athlete will think that you're personally attacking them. So by saying, oh, you need to get motivated, be motivated, you're inferring that it's not part of their personality. Motivation can mean something different for each member. I remember once I was trying to punish my group and to discourage a negative behaviour. So I chose a punishment of running, a suicide. However, whilst it was effective to discourage behaviours for at least 9 out of the 10 of the girls, one girl absolutely loved running. So the message wasn't really passed on. So different motives can mean different things for different people. And at the end of the day, as a coach, you are missing the main point. You haven't told them how to become motivated. You can't. It's like asking somebody to concentrate. They're going to spend time concentrating about concentrating rather than what do you want them to concentrate on. Same goes with motivation. Why is it important? As a coach or a leader, if you want to be successful, you need to know what factors affect motivation, but you also need to know what methods you could implement to enhance motivation. So when we look at motivation a little bit further, we have environmental factors and personality factors. As a coach and leader, I can understand the personality factors of the individual and try best to work with them to encourage positive behaviour, but also I can manipulate the environment so that it also encourages, enhances motivation of the individual. There's a number of different views, and this is what I mentioned in the last session, that there's lots of theories and explanation as to why people behave the way they do. So we're going to have a look at some views on motivation. First and foremost, let's have a look at the old school, the trait participant-centered view. And basically this view stands that one's personality, their needs and their goals are the primary determinant of motivated behaviour. So they predict that a person will be successful in their sport because they have the personal makeup that allows them to excel. Okay, they have the personality, the needs, the goals to get them there. But if you have a look at this explanation or approach, this isn't really endorsed by sport and exercise science because it ignores the environmental influences on motivation. So regardless of the personality of the individual, it's ignoring things like the leadership style that individual's under. It's ignoring how harmonious the environment is around them, how stimulating it is. And so for it to stand alone, just considering the person's personality makeup, it's not strong enough. Other factors are involved. For example, the learning environment created by a teacher. Okay, whilst you can have students and you can understand their personality, if your environment doesn't tick the boxes and isn't stimulating and isn't cohesive, it's definitely going to interfere with the motivation of the individual. The situation-centered view. This looks at how an individual's motivational level is determined largely by the situation. So instead, this is looking at the opposite side, a different perspective. It says, however, the view is limited as well because now you're disregarding the personality profile of the individual and what comes with that. This view is limited as well because there has been times when we have remained motivated despite a negative environment. Okay, so think about the coaching. So if you've got a coach who's just hounds you all season, but yet you still turn up and you still enjoy the sport despite the fact that you are in an environment that isn't really encouraging or motivating. So with a situation-centered view, it looks at how the individual's motivation level is determined by the situation itself. And then we have the most widely endorsed view, and this is the interactional view. So this examines how the participants' factors and the situational factors both interact to influence one's motivation. Now, if you are trying to understand personality and motivation, and you are trying to encourage and enhance motivation, you need to consider the personality factors. What's the personality of the person? What are their needs? What are their interests? What are their goals? You also got to consider the situational factors. So the leadership style, the facilitative attractiveness, team win-loss ratio, any situational factor that can either encourage or discourage motivation towards that particular activity. So with this view, it looks at participation by situation interaction. So it's looking at how both of those things influence participant motivation. So how do we build motivation? First and foremost, consider, again, off that recent explanation, consider the situation and the personal characteristics influencing motivation. Okay, so you've got to consider situation and personal characteristics. Identify the multiple motives for involvement. For any individual, there are many reasons why they are participating in sport. Some will be stronger than others, but identify what they are. Identify why people participate in physical activity. It could be because they're concerned about their health, but maybe the number one motive is because they're worried about how their partner views their body. So that's not necessarily going to be the best motivation source, because at the end of the day, that person is changing behaviour because of wanting to get somebody else's approval as opposed to actually wanting the intention to do it themselves. Or observe participants and continue to monitor motives. So I touch base on when you look at an individual, think about you when you started your sports, your motives. I remember mine was love, fun, games. But as I got older and played at a more of a representative level, your motives do change. It's about trying to achieve personal best and, et cetera, et cetera. How do you build motivation continued? You can change the environment. Okay, so you can look at providing both competition and recreation. Individuals in your group, some thrive on competition and need a carrot dangled in front of them and they need to chase it. And other people just like the social, recreational, do my best but have fun type of goals as opposed to who's the best. And then provide multiple opportunities, so fun as well as working hard. So if you've got a team with mixed, and you're going to find in teams, you're going to have people with different motives. Some are for social reasons why they're there, and I'll talk a bit about this when I talk about team cohesion. And some are there, so if we have social or tasks, they're actually there because they want to be the best basketball player or the best soccer player or the best mid-court, depending on the sport. Leaders do have a big influence on one's motivation, both directly and indirectly. Think about times when you have coached and you've walked into the room, onto the court or field, and you weren't really wanting to be there. Whether you know it or not, you indirectly will influence the group around you and the group that you're leading, because they will see the fact that you don't want to be there. And then use behaviour modification to change undesirable motives and to strengthen weak motivation. So doing things like goal setting, rewards programs, that type of stuff, cues, etc., to acknowledge and encourage good motives, and then to get rid of undesirable motives. Okay, two important terms that you need to be familiar with. You need to understand achievement motivation, and you need to understand what competitiveness is. So why are some people more motivated to achieve their goals than others? Okay, that's really what we're looking at trying to answer. Achievement motivation is a person's orientation to strive for task success, to achieve excellence, to overcome obstacles, and to perform better than others. When they do this, they actually experience pride in their accomplishments. So they are trying to do the best that they can and succeed. And when they get this done, they will experience pride. Whereas competitiveness, this is more of a disposition to strive for satisfaction when making comparisons with some standard of excellence in the presence of evaluative others. So here it's about beating people around you as opposed to doing the best that you can. So why are these important? Many people will compete with themselves. And in these situations, they're not evaluated by others. So it's a bit confusing because we're saying people are motivated, or people look to achieve and have achievement motivation, but sometimes they're also competing at the same time because they are trying to beat their personal best. Therefore, the level of achievement motivation one has can bring out this self-competitiveness, whereas competitiveness will influence behaviour in socially evaluated situations. So you can have achievement motivation and be competitive at the same time. Here you're trying to beat yourself, and I guess we classify that as self-competitiveness, whereas when we just get rid of the self and we look at competitiveness, it's really looking about influencing behaviour in socially evaluated situations. What's important about these terms? Well, we want to know how a person's competitiveness and achievement motivation influences their choice of activity, their effort to pursue their goals, the intensity of effort to pursue their goals, and the persistence in the face of failure or adversity. Okay, so by understanding one's achievement motivation and competitiveness, you'll be able to then have a look or predict or work best with your individual by understanding choice of activity, how much effort they put in, the intensity, and whether they stick at something if they're not going too well. Okay, so now we are going to look at some theories related to achievement motivation. And it really is looking at explaining what motivates people to act. We'll look at the need achievement theory, attribution theory, achievement goal theory, and the competence motivation theory. So the need achievement theory, this is an interactional view. So here we're looking at, as I mentioned earlier on in the lecture, both personal and situational factors. This theory says that there are 5 components that make up this theory. You have personality factors and motives, you have situational factors, you have result tendencies, emotional reactions, and achievement-related behaviour. Personality factors really are concerned with 2 achievement motives: to achieve success or to avoid failure. So depending on the individual, they are either looking at completing a task to achieve success, or they're doing the task to avoid failure. When people look to achieve success, these tend to be your high achievers. Those are people who are trying to avoid failure. We consider probably low achievers. Then it also looks at situational factors. So 2 primary considerations: the probability of success, the competition or task difficulty, whether you can beat the person that you're up against or whether the task is too hard. And then also the incentive value of success. Well, what does it mean? If I do get this done, is it important? Will I be acknowledged, recognised, etc.? Now, your result tendencies, these are derived from considering an individual's motive to achieve in relation to situational factors. Okay, this is best explained with situations where the chance for success is 50-50, so you might win or you might not win. What result tendencies have a look at? High achievers will seek out challenges because they like competing against others of equal ability, and they like moderately difficult tasks, and they don't mind having a go at it. Whereas low achievers, they will avoid challenges and opt for an easier task where success is guaranteed, or tasks where failure is almost certain. So they do not fear failure, they fear the negative evaluations associated with it. So they have no problems taking on somebody who's completely out of their class and losing, because that's expected. However, they'll opt out and choose easy tasks as well because they want to guarantee success. So it's not about they do not fear failure, but rather more so whatever they are feeling or predicting or throwing out there, whether they're successful or not, is really what's the judge of that, whether they can actually do it or not. And the 50-50 circumstances are the questionable ones. Emotional reactions, so how much pride or shame one experiences. So high achievers focus more on pride, whereas low achievers more on shame or worry. And then lastly, achievement behaviour, how the 4 other components interact to influence behaviour. So high achievers are the ones who will select more challenging tasks, they'll prefer intermediate risks, and they'll perform better when they're actually evaluated. Low achievers will avoid immediate risks, perform worse in evaluative situations, and they will avoid challenging tasks. So they pick ones that they are certain to fail or succeed. Okay, so this is what the theory looks like. I wanted to go through the variables first before actually showing you this diagram. And you can see based on this, personality and situational factors will influence whether you approach success or avoid failure. That in turn will affect your emotions, and then that will then influence your achievement behaviour. Okay, so this is what theory, if we put it in a graph or a diagram flowchart, this is what it looks like. So you have that there for your own knowledge. Second theory is the attribution theory. Now this is quite interesting because it looks at how people explain their success and failures. Often, and now I'm more in tune to it because I have done a fair bit of studying this, but I will listen to the reasons why people say they were successful or not successful. Now, basic attribution categories are stability, locus of causality, and locus of control. So if we're looking at the stability factors, you either have stable factors such as IQ, talent, and athleticism, and you have unstable factors such as luck, the weather, injury, etc. Then you have locus of causality, internal, so how much effort you put in, the preparation you've done, your game plan, etc. Versus internal, it's caused by external things such as easier team had injuries, referee was great, weather conditions were perfect. So when you explain why you were successful or not, you externalize it rather than internalize it. And then locus of control, in your control, for example, your race plan, your mental prep, your strategy, versus out of one's control, which is opponents, physical conditions, their plans, And again, weather would come under that as well. So the explanation of one's performance will affect their expectations and emotional reactions and future motivation. So if an athlete does attribute success or failure to stable, internal, controllable factors, then the situation would promote emotional reactions like pride or shame. And these are really what, and if an athlete is to grow and to become resilient, they need to be able to identify the internal, controllable, and stable factors that influence the outcome of their performance. Okay. The explanation of one's performance will affect their expectations and emotional reactions and future motivation. So if an individual is attributions, is saying that their performance was due to stable factors, then there's an increased expectation of success. If they assert the explanations as being unstable, well, there's a decreased expectations of success. If we have a look at causality, so attributions related to that, internal causes, increased pride or shame, whereas if they're asserting that the outcome is due to external causes, well, there's a decreased pride or shame because there's no accountability or responsibility for that. And then lastly, control factors. If it's in their control, it's increased motivation. If it is out of their control, it's decreased motivation because there's nothing that you can do to influence something that is out of your control. And then the third theory is achievement goal theory. I found this quite useful as a coach and a leader, understanding that achievement goals, outcome-orientated goals versus task-orientated goals, and an individual's perceived ability, whether they think they can, whether it's high or low, will influence their achievement behaviour. So it'll influence how they perform, how much effort they put in, how long they stick at something, and the task choice, whether they do an easy or hard task. Achievement goal theory has two orientations. Outcome orientation, actually it has three. There's also social orientation, but I'll talk about that in a sec. Focuses on comparing and defeating others, whereas task orientation focuses on improving one's own past performance. Can you be both? Yes, you can. You might want to win, but you also might want to achieve your PB. So in that circumstance, that individual is striving to beat their own past performance, but they're also trying to get the overall successful outcome, comparing themselves to others. Problems with outcome orientation, and this is something that I really took away as a coach and a leader. If you are always referring or judging performance based on winning or losing, first, second or third, the best, the worst, your athletes or the people that you're working with will have difficulty to maintain high perceived competence, particularly if they're at the fringe and not the dominant performer. Every time you do something, they're always going to fail. So their perceived competence is going to be affected because the more they experience failure, the more they get shut down. Judgments are made on comparisons, but you can't control others. So they can control themselves, and therefore it's important that the focus should be about improving past performances of yourself rather than others. They are likely to reduce effort, cease trying or make excuses, and they are likely to select tasks that guarantee success. Whereas, and this is what I've worked on trying to do, change my orientation to task. If you have a task orientation, it's about beating your own past performances, it's about processes. You will encourage strong work ethic, persistence in the face of failure because it's not outcome orientated, because it's about achieving a task, as opposed to win and loss. It's easier for the ego to stick at it. It does encourage optimal performance because you're focused on the right cues, and people are more likely to select moderately difficult or realistic tasks rather than always picking something that they're going to be successful at. They also added to this model that you could have social goal orientations, and this is found to be determinant of behaviour. Like, people do play sports because they want to socially spend time with others. So individuals are motivated by the desire for social connections and the need to belong to a group. These goals are shown to be associated to participant enjoyment, intrinsic motivation, as well as competence. So even having a social orientation and wanting to be in sport or part of a team can influence how much enjoyment you have, your love for it, the intrinsic motivation, as well as your belief that you can complete it. The last theory that we'll have a look at is competence motivation theory. And the primary determinants of motivation, this asserts that the primary determinants of motivation is a drive to feel competent and worthy. An individual's perception of control over whether they can learn or perform a skill will work along with their self-worth and competence evaluations to influence their motivation. So these feelings indirectly influence motivation by affecting one's emotional states. Okay, so if we break this down, it's about the drive to feel competent and worthy. So if you feel competent and you value yourself, you're more likely to experience feelings of confidence and enjoyment, and you're more likely to then influence the outcome in a positive way. So if we have a look at this, your feedback and reinforcement from the coaches, and then the motivational orientations, whether they're intrinsically or extrinsically motivated, whether they're task or outcome, and their trait anxiety, which I'll talk about a bit later when we look at anxiety, will influence self-esteem, perceived competence, and perceived control. This will affect your feelings and your affect, so your enjoyment, your anxiety, your pride, your happiness and shame, and that in turn then will affect your motivation. So we kind of have this flow chart that says you've got things that feed into your self-worth, esteem, control, that then affects your affect, so your feelings, and then that then influences your motivation towards an activity. Right, what the theories tell us about motivation. It tells us when we're looking at motivational orientations, high motivation. If you're a high achiever, you have a high motivation to achieve success. You have a low motivation to avoid failure, and you focus on pride of success. Whereas low achievers, when we look at motivational orientation, low motivation to achieve success, more so about how to motivate to avoid failure. They focus on shame and worry that may result from failure as well. When we look at the attribution theory, basically high achievers put down success to stable, internal and controllable factors, and failure to unstable, external and outside their control. Whereas low achievers attribute success to unstable and external factors that are outside their control, whereas low achievers will attribute failure to stable and internal factors. So it's two very different ways to look at it. Sometimes you can kind of think, somebody who's cocky won't take the accountability for errors, whereas somebody who's really quite down on themselves and don't strive for success, try to avoid failure, will internalise failure but won't take on board and internalise success. When we look at goals adopted, high achievers adopt an incremental or task goals. So they look at processes, and they typically adopt approach goals, something that they can go and achieve. Low achievers usually adopt outcome or entity goals, and they typically adopt avoidance goals. With regards to perceived confidence and control, high achievers have perceived confidence and believes that achievement is within one's control. High achievers have low perceived confidence and believe that achievement is outside one's control. High achievers will take on challenging tasks. Low achievers will take on things that are fairly easy or guaranteed success. Or they'll pick very difficult tasks that they know they're not going to be successful in. And then performance conditions, high achievers perform well in evaluative situations, whereas low achievers do not. All right, how to guide achievement, motivation, orientation, and competitiveness. Again, basic principle, consider situational and personal factors. Focus on the tasks. Really look at process goals, mastery goals, and downplay outcome goals. Create a mastery environment where you set up drills and skills, or whatever it is that you're doing, where they can actually succeed. Don't set up really challenging tasks that they keep failing, because that's only going to bring down their confidence, which will affect their motivation. Monitor and alter attributional feedback. Assess or correct participants' attributions. And this is something I've really taken on board, is listening to how people explain success and failure, and making sure, particularly when I'm working with clients, about correcting factors that are explanations that aren't internal, stable, and controllable. Help participants realise when to focus on competition or individual improvement. You've got to have a mix of both. It can't just be only competition orientated. And enhance perceptions of competence and control. We want the people to feel that they have the skills to do it, and that they can control their skills within the environment. Okay, so that's the end of the summary of what motivation is and the different theoretical explanations to help us understand motivation. This next bit, we'll have a look at why do people exercise and why do they not exercise? Reasons why people do exercise, and I'm only going to briefly go through this. Weight control, reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, reduction in stress and depression, enjoyment, building self-esteem, and opportunities to socialise. The main reasons for not exercising is perceived lack of time, lack of motivation, and people generally think, I don't have the energy to exercise. They're too tired to exercise. The question that surrounds these three reasons why they do not is, are these reasons within the individual's control? The main reasons for not exercising, let's explore that question. The major reasons for not starting and sticking to an exercise program are often internal and personally controllable causes. So, time constraints. People say, I don't have enough time, but yet people have enough time to watch their favourite program. They just don't have enough time to go to the gym or do the exercise routine. So time constraints are more perceived than real and often reveal the person's priorities. So their priority is to watch whatever the show is that they want to watch, as opposed to doing a 40-minute exercise program. So let's have a look at each of them. Perceived lack of time. Why can people find time for their favourite TV show or going out but not for exercise? So as a fitness professional, you need to make sure that your programs are fun and they're satisfying, that they're doing activities that they actually enjoy and want to improve on, that they're meaningful and convenient. The last thing you want to do is have somebody have to drive 30 minutes to a session. You want to make sure the exercise, so that the exercise can compete against other leisure activities. So the exercise needs to become more attractive than going to the pub or going watching your favourite show. So that's a challenge, and I think it's about understanding the person that you're working with and making sure you tick those boxes. Lack of energy. Individuals need to realise exercise affects. So it does relieve tension, relieve stress, and it is actually energising. The research says exercise, think about it, after you have a really good session, you feel great, you feel energised. So trying to get rid of the misconceptions about exercise and what it does to the body. So again, as a fitness professional, make sure you that fun is a basic premise behind the design of your program. And then the last one, lack of motivation. Motivation can diminish over time, and eventually people let go of exercise for other leisure activities. As a fitness professional, know that you need to promote the positive benefits. You've got to make sure that the pros outweigh the cons, and you've got to be ready for it. So when they do have, and we're going to always have times, and I'll explain this when I look at exercise adherence, where you withdraw from the activity, even though you know it's helpful, because motivation has diminished. And as a personal trainer or a fitness professional, you need to find ways to keep them engaged, which is really important. Okay, so that wraps up. I'll just end this show and stop sharing the screen. So that wraps up this week's material. Make sure you access the activities. I think I've got a handout for you. So just get that stuff done in the tutorial workbook that I've left for you. And then there's a forum for you to interact with each other. So we'll clock on in week 3 and just go through that stuff. I have left an online tute for you that was recorded last semester, so that you can have a look at what the Google Hangout looks like and how it works. And then we will have a go in week 3. Hope you all enjoy your week, and I will chat soon. See you later.